In this video, we are going to talk about the global food crisis challenges and solutions. So, before starting, please like and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Let's begin. Currently, the globe is experiencing a catastrophic global food crisis brought on by high inflation, disruptions in the supply chain, and the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. This occurs at a time when the stability of the world food market is still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic-induced economic crisis and agricultural failures due to the environment, including those caused by hurricanes and drought. As a result, the economies of low-income countries that rely largely on food imports have been worse damaged. Major call to actions to combat the situation. The current agro situation concerns the accessibility of basic food commodities, such as wheat, rice, maize, and seed oil, to the most vulnerable and in-need economies. According to experts, the most crucial calls to action to improve the situation are open commerce, information openness, waivers on food import taxes, and, most critically, the free movement of fertilizers for farms around the world. Providing weather index payments to farmers and assisting them in planting weather-resistant seeds to reduce crop losses are two examples of the solutions that call for a global infrastructure. The macro-level consequences: food prices are rising not only in developing countries but also in the global north, which includes the US and the UK. Yet, the insecurity of receiving inadequate or expensive vital food supplies has a substantial influence on developing African countries. If we look at North Africa, its nations are dependent on wheat imports from Russia and Ukraine, and their governments are unable to keep up with the rising cost of food. The region now cries out for UN action to supply food aid and measures to combat inflation. Government responses to the food crisis. The main food exporting countries have implemented trade restrictions on their food grain trade, worsening the issue. By mid-2022, 20 countries had significant agro-export levies and 17% trade calorie limits. In May, India restricted wheat exports to boost domestic access, while in September, it barred broken rice exports and imposed a 20% levy on non-basmati rice, excluding parboiled rice. The broken rice export prohibition was implemented to promote the nation's ethanol blending program and reduce its dependence on expensive oil imports. The country allows grain to ethanol production. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has exacerbated the illegal market and grain stockpiling, harming struggling economies like Tunisia and Turkey. The Tanzanian government requires Kenyan importers to register in Dar es Salaam to prevent arbitrary food grain exports. Increase in hunger and global malnutrition. One of the most pervasive worldwide food insecurity problems of the century has been caused by decades-long inflation, extreme meteorological circumstances, starvation in some countries made worse by the pandemic, and armed strife in Europe. There were inflationary tensions in the commodity market even before Russia invaded Ukraine, but as the conflict intensified, the situation got far worse. In the end, farmers all over the world were impacted by Russia's shortage of fuel and fertilizer supplies like nitrogen and potash. Wheat, corn, rice, and oilseed harvests shrank as a result, and eventually the entire supply chain appears to have collapsed. According to economists, the current scenario is dire. It might undo earlier international efforts to reduce mass hunger and malnutrition if it continues for a few more years. Effects of the conflict. Around 30% of the wheat supply that Russia and Ukraine together offer to the world has been halted due to the conflict. For the same reason, the violence has also impacted the supply chains for corn, sunflower seed oil, and barley. Social unrest and political unrest have been ongoing for the past 7 years in conflict-ridden countries, the majority of which are struggling developing economies. Ethiopia, Afghanistan, Central Africa, Gambia, Liberia, Mali, Mozambique, Rwanda, Somalia, South Sudan, Syria, Yemen, and Ukraine are just a few examples. As the political elite cannot manage both the rising import costs and the social unrest at the same time, the conflict-affected areas are predicted to have suffered from food insecurity the most. Rice shortages. In 2023, there will be a greater focus on the issue of food access, which can be dealt with through a collateral strategy. The availability of rice is now a concern, which is the complete opposite of how people reacted to the wheat crop. While the monsoon has already lowered rice production in countries like India, the cost of fertilizer is increasing and has a significant negative impact on the production of rice. The bulk of nations, including most of Asia and sub-Saharan Africa, rely on rice as their main food source. In order to prevent other importing countries from being without their main meal in the upcoming years, economists and international organizations have promised appropriate fertilizer supply to the countries that produce rice. What do you think about our video? Please let us know in the comments area below. If you enjoyed this video and would want to hear from me again, please subscribe and turn on the notification before leaving. Thank you for watching us.